everybody. My name is James. I am from the internet, and today we are going to be talking about stocking the shelves. Now, yesterday, I put out a very small, tiny little video about the oncoming wave of inflation that was going to claim us all. And in that video, I proscribed certain theories that the majority of inflationary increases and inflationary spending are caused by money not being properly distributed, cycling through the economy, generating taxes, and overall being spent at a rate equivalent to which it is created or reintroduced. Oddly enough, I got a lot of blowback on this video from armchair economists who said, inflation is when too much money. No, that was it. No comparative. No, inflation is caused when you have too much money compared to the amount of money cycling through the economy, or compared to the amount of money that is spent on labor and resource acquisition. No, just inflation is when too much money. So, rather than just letting this go and moving on, because in case you didn't know, I am that dick, I'm going to double down. However, I'm going to look at this from a slightly different angle today, speak slower, and use smaller words for the people at home who still might be a tad confused. So in case you missed it yesterday, for the first time, here we go! Grocery store shelves aren't going back to normal this year. This is a very loud clarion call to consumers out there everywhere. And again, reminder, the majority of consumers are also laborers and members of the working class. Just to let you all know, even if you're out there busting ass and grinding and making money, you know, you might not be able to get certain side items or toppings for your favorite annual home-cooked holiday meal. And if you do find them, they're going to be really expensive. I'm going to crack through this here, and let's see if we can find where there's facts and where there's bullshit. If you hoped grocery stores this fall and winter would look like they did in the before times, with limitless options stretching out before you in the snack, drink, candy, and frozen food aisles, get ready for some disappointing news. Many of the country's biggest food makers are telling grocers that they will have limited quantities of a number of their products, including items such as Ben & Jerry's ice cream flavors, Rice Krispie treats, Sour Patch Kids, McCormick gourmet spices, and oh no, Marie Callender's pot pies, because of labor, commodity, and transportation constraints throttling supply chains, according to emails viewed by CNN and interviews with grocers. Some suppliers are also telling grocers to cancel their promotions of these items, and moreover, the holiday, so products won't disappear from store shelves as quickly. Now, there are a number of things of note in this opening salvo here, not the least of which is that there are only very specific products made by specific manufacturers that you are going to be unable to find. However, this opening salvo is supposed to prepare you to gird your loins and get ready to accept the fact that somehow every last thing you do buy that is in stock is going to be more expensive. Also, you will note that the reasons for this that they're showing right there in the article are that there are issues with labor, commodity, and transportation constraints. All three of those are solved by throwing money at them, yet somehow all three of those problems were allowed to happen, which then created the current situation. I will explain more as we go further through the article. These latest limits mean that stores won't have all the things for all the customers heading into the holidays, and shoppers may not be able to find some of their favorite products, flavors, or niche items. But shoppers will still have plenty of options, including most of these companies' core products, which they're prioritizing over items in less demand. Meaning, for instance, that if you're a fan of Ben & Jerry's popular fish food ice cream, you shouldn't have a problem. But the company's less well-known cold brew caramel latte might be harder to find. Cool. Noted. not a problem. Also, if you're a large corporation and you have 15 different product SKUs that are all essentially made up of the same base ingredients, and you're taking a couple of those lower volume product SKUs out of rotation so that you can coalesce your labor and resources, yeah, that means you chose to have less labor and purchase fewer resources, or when the price of certain resources went up, you opted to not buy them and throttled your own brand. This isn't the market throttling Ben & Jerry's into not having that flavor. It's Ben & Jerry's prioritizing which flavors they are going to sell, i.e., which are still going to derive the most profit because they are the easiest to make and they have the lowest possible resource costs. Purchase limits from manufacturers were rare before the pandemic and are creating lesser than full conditions for customers in Morton Williams stores, which is a New York grocery chain. They're trying to tap secondary suppliers when its primary vendors for food and household essentials can't fulfill orders. Quote, "It's not your ideal situation. Some customers have been forgiving when they're unable to find what they're looking for, but others just want to know why they can't get their item. Well, some customers who are wondering why they can't get their item, let me explain it to you. This grocery store chain had multiple options to buy the same product from multiple vendors, but because capitalism requires you to derive as much profit as possible from every single operation or expense or procedure or process, that instead of having multiple contracts with multiple sources, they instead had one contract with one main source to reduce their costs, to get a discount for buying all of their product from one vendor. So now they are desperately trying to source secondary vendors, which they would have had if they had dispersed their accrual process through multiple vendors rather than the one vendor to save 3 or 4% a year, because that 3 or 4% a year is what drives quarterly sharehold dividend checks. Kellogg told at least 4 grocery distributors last month in an email that Pringles, Snack Stacks, Eggo pancakes, Morningstar Farm plant-based hot dogs, and bacon will be on allocation, and Rice Krispie Treat snacks will remain below service expectations. Oh, the horror! The company also requested that stores cancel their promotions for Rice Krispies and Corn Pop cereal, quote, to allow for recovery. Kellogg said in the email that it was experiencing, quote, constraints in capacity and packaging materials and labor pressure. This was before the 1,400 Kellogg cereal factory workers went on strike. Now, as I previously covered in other videos about the Kellogg strike, the company knew that the labor contract with the union in question was going to be expiring in a year, and rather than addressing it, they dicked around for an entire year until the very end of the contract, and now have just decided to, quote, enter into good faith negotiations. So to say that Kellogg sent this out before the strike is disingenuous by CNN. They sent this out knowing full well that they had been dicking around with negotiations with their labor union for the last 8 months, were going to continue to do so for the next 4 months, and then would more than likely have to have a strike. Also, as we found out doing research from those videos, every single one of these corporations in their manufacturing facilities are running skeleton crews and working people 80 hours a week, sometimes 7 days a week, for 6 months straight, rather than scaling up their labor force, because scaling up a labor force requires cost, and they don't want to have to spend any more money because they are enjoying all-time high profitability per unit shipped at the moment. Why would they want to fuck with that by spending more money to hire more people? So instead they run the skeleton crew, put out as much product as they can, make the highest profitability, give the most money to their corporate shareholders, who then buy more shares, and the stock price continues to go up, even though you are engaging the lowest amount of the workforce possible. Mondelez Foods is experiencing, quote, limited availability on items such as Sour Patch Kids and Swedish Fish Candy, Toblerone chocolate, and Hall's cough drops, quote, due to supply chain constraints. A spokesperson for Mondelez said, quote, the company is facing high demand for labor and logistics challenges. Mondelez believes it is, quote, relatively well positioned to face the marketplace challenges and will continue to keep a close eye on things to get products to retail customers and shoppers on time. Please note, Mondelez Foods is the owner of Nabisco, where they also just had a labor strike after dicking around a negotiation for a year, after running a skeleton crew for a year to keep profits at an all-time high. Exact same story. And Mondelez, just like Kellogg's, just like Lay's PepsiCo, had the option to ramp up production, hire more people, acquire more resources through advanced purchase orders, chose to do none of those things and stand pat so that they could raise their profitability per item and drive up their stock price. Unilever told a distributor in an email on September 14th that, quote, labor shortages continue to drive a limited ability to meet demand, and it was deprioritizing production on certain products. Quote, until we are able to return to a supply steady state. The company said it would instead focus labor hours on top-selling items. They're literally saying it out loud. A labor shortage doesn't mean there are no people to do the job. Last time I checked, federal U4 unemployment rate was still somewhere up above 5%. So there are people to work jobs. The problem is they don't want to give raises. They don't want to have to go through the expense of interviewing people, drug testing people, hiring people, training people, giving them uniforms, having somebody whisper to them in a corner about possibly joining a labor union. All the ancillary costs that go with onboarding more labor, Unilever doesn't want to do. So they're literally saying rather than hiring enough labor to meet demand, they are choosing to just reduce the amount of product SKUs they have into the most profitable ones. And if you like the other brands, well, you can go fuck yourself. Packaging issues also continue to be a problem. For example, some seasonings are in tight supply due to challenges procuring glass bottles. A McCormick representative said in an email to two distributors on September 20th that, quote, our U.S. bottle supplier shut down due to a COVID-related issue, and we have not received bottles for several weeks for its gourmet spices line. The lack of bottles has impacted our production and is eroding our safety stock across the entire line, the representative said. As a result, McCormick said it would ship approximately 70% of what it had previously forecast, and that the company was encouraging customers to cancel their promotions in November and December for the spices line. Jesus, could you imagine? The pumpkin spice people are telling you to not go out and buy peppermint spice next month? This is some mind-blowing shit. However, not unpredicted. Back in early 2020, once they realized that there was going to have to be mass production and mass shipping of a vaccine, a lot of the global glass bottle manufacturing pivoted over to make vials for vaccines because glass is the safest way to ship them in a sterile, safe environment without other chemicals leaking in from the container. And so for the last year and a half, all of these companies have been churning out tiny little glass bottles for vaccines instead of all the bottles they need to make for, I don't know, spices. However, for the last year and a half, McCormick could have gone out and found yet another glass manufacturer or distributor. Oh, wait, that's right. They can't because they have a contract with just one bottle manufacturer for the specific bottle for the specific spices. Why? Because having more than one distributor would end up costing them a few cents more per unit, and you can't have that in capitalism because survey says you always have to maximize profitability to drive up share prices. Thank you for playing our game. So what does this mean for you, the average viewer at home, the fellow member of the working class and fellow consumer? Well, it means that yes, inflation is coming. However, it does not mean that inflation is coming because too much money That's not a thing. Inflation is coming because there is too much money and it is not being spent where it needs to be spent. We have nearly $6 trillion out there between fiat currency and digital ones and zeros. However, the vast majority of that money is not being spent. It is being put in real estate holdings, in trusts. It's being put offshore and in tax-free IRAs. It's being places where it can't be taxed, but it can generate a certain amount of return. And because it's not being recycled back into the economy, well, now we have supply shortages. All of these supply shortages could have been solved by spending money, acquiring more resources, hiring more people, expanding more travel routes, getting more deliveries, and essentially ramping up production across the board. But that did not happen. Until next time, my name is James, I am from the internet, and I am out. Peace.